Hey, good evening, everyone. Good evening. You know what today is? Podcast day. We're excited to be here with you. In case you guys have not noticed, when Dr. Obiama Martin came on, I was like, oh, I love your green. When Damaris came on, she was like, Aaliyah, you look nice in your green. And it is so on point for what we're going to talk about today, which is investments. So
I
we
feel like I need to change my shirt or something.
we already know you're about the green, right? We already know. So we're all together.
Yeah.
You are all about the green. You
Yes.
manifest green. You walk and talk green. Yes, yes, yes,
So
yes. I don't know nobody that's greener than you.
we love it. We're on here green together. And we are going to talk about. So I did share with you guys. We were scheduled to have our conversation with our financial advisor, Kevin Smith, but he has to join us on the next episode. But it's okay because we stay ready. We stay ready.
All the
Therefore,
time.
we pivoted, and we're still going to talk about investments. We're just going to talk about it in a different way. So what we figured we would do is. We'll share different ways that we've made investments, right? And talk about what our return on our investment has looked like. Why did we invest in that very thing? Now, this could be business, personal. I don't know about you guys, but business and personal, a lot of times they align for me. But in our lives, we'll talk about some things that we've invested in because sometimes, again, exposure, right? I may have had an experience I can share with you guys. Same for the other ladies. You guys are always welcome. We can actually typically see your comments and we can share it on here. So share with us what investments you've made. Why did you invest? And what was your return on investment? So we're kind of going to popcorn it around and jump in and try to figure out what investment have you made. And we're going to start with you, Ms. Damaris. Tell us about an investment that you've made, why, and what was your return on your investment?
I invest every single day. I'm all about scare money makes no money. So that's just what it is. I invest in insurances. I make sure that I am insured up to the wazoo. Because I want to make sure that I am covered, right? I want to make sure that my businesses are set up where I am not liable for anything. So that's step one. Insurances, I have my professional liability insurance. I have, my other $1 million liability insurance. I also have loss of income insurance, for those emergency, what if stuff that happens, that it interrupts my cash flow, my insurance kicks in, right? So those are some of the few of the many investments that I have made. I'm into real estate. I've purchased some real estates. I'm not a huge fan of debt, right? So I'm really intentional about paying down my debt because I'm cheap, guys. I'm really cheap. I don't like to give interest to other folks. So I'm really intentional that if I have to get a loan, I pay that loan off really, really quickly, as quick as possible, because I don't like giving my money away. I just feel like I'm blowing money out the window, right? So those are some of the investments. And here's my return, right? We talked a little bit earlier today at another seminar or another podcast about being gully. When you are financially set, or when things happen and you are set up like with the proper insurances, the proper business, strategies and everything, you get gully. That's the new word of the day. The vocabulary word of the day is gully, where you feel a lot more comfortable when things happen, right? Less mental, less stress, but basically. So, I am comfortable now where, of course, I love money. I love making money. Yama said I talk money all the time. But I have options, right? Because I set myself up strategically for many years. This didn't happen overnight. So that's my like some of the few investments and some of the returns that I have.
I like.
Yeah.
Hey. Dr. Obiyama, what say you?
So, like so many things. I wanted to start off by talking about the first investment that I made was in myself when I started in the business of childcare, and that was in my education. When I first opened up my daycare, I knew nothing about taking care of children, right? And so I was like, this is serious, right? And I just didn't want to be in a situation where I was going to be held liable, right? So the first investment that I made was going to school, investing in my education, and also investing time in the library to learn everything I could about the business of childcare, right? And operating. And I think that that's really, really important because too oftentimes people jump into things and don't make the investment to secure that their foundation is strong.
Yeah.
And so that was the first thing that came to my mind was me investing in me so that my foundation was strong, so that if anything came up, I could be confident knowing that I know what I know and can't nobody shake me. And the return on that continues to pay because as you know, things come and you get tested and people come and try to shake you and all these different things. But when you have that sure foundation and you know that you know that you know, you can stand flat footed and like bring it
Yes.
because I'm covered, right? So the same way Damaris has made sure she's financially covered, investing in yourself in terms of the education, in terms of the law,
Mm.
right? In terms of making sure you know what this codes are,
Yeah.
whether it is LNI codes, whether it's DPW codes, DHS codes, health and safety codes, whatever the codes are, nobody can come into your program and intimidate you and try to tell you that you're in violation for doing something that's not in the code.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing that comes. That's like a really really big thing for me.
I got you. I do want to expound on something that you said. I remember being in a course and they asked, type in the chat or share your biggest investment. So of course everybody's like 10,000, 100,000 is all this money. And they were like, but what about time? And I think a lot of times we do only look at investments in regards to money, but our time is something we can never get back. And we spend a lot of that very resource on so many things. And I don't know about you, but I'm sure you guys feel the same way. But I know my time is very, very valuable. We don't have unlimited time. So where are we putting our time into? So, I definitely started looking at um, time as an investment and being a lot more intentional about how I'm using my time, which is why I was going to share one of my other investments. But since I'm talking about that, I'll share one investment that I've made for my business, which is floaters, the full-time floaters. Why? Because on days like today, and we spoke about that earlier, days like today when you have a number of staff sick and they're calling out, I did not have to go into a classroom. I did not have to take away from my higher level activities that's going to bring my business more money and put my time focus in an area that it didn't have to because I already invested in floaters.
I gotta interject right there because you just, oh my God, you took me back. You took me back. Lord have mercy. That part right there, as a director, you Lord, I remember years of being a director, an executive director, overseeing other people's programs where the owner did not see the value in investing in floaters. And so when people called out or they legit had emergencies, it was I who was in the classroom. It was I who was making meals. It was I who was driving the bus. And I was just, and I always felt like and you think this is the best, like
To
I am the
invest in your
highest
team,
paid.
right?
Yeah, I am the highest paid person on your payroll, and you really got me in the kitchen making meals?
That is not a good return on investment.
I've always invested in floaters, many years, because I like you said, Aaliyah, things happen in the childcare space. You can have so many call outs. One day you might have half of your team out, right? We know this through COVID, right? One person gets COVID and 5 people get COVID and they're all out, and you have to still continue running your program and try to keep the kids inside the classrooms. Floaters are the very best. If it's really difficult now, right? We all know there's staffing shortages. We all understand that. But if you can really find even a family member that is willing to come in to become a floater, even if it's part-time, pay them.
Exactly.
Don't call them volunteer. I mean, there's a difference between volunteers and there's a difference between people that want to get paid or need, should be getting paid for the work that they're doing, right? And those are great opportunities to bring in. That's a number one investment that if people can't afford it, I can definitely tell you, put it in your budget. You're gonna love it. Your return would be less staff burnout.
Yeah, absolutely. But then look at the money again. You cannot afford to not,
Yes.
because I can afford to use my energy, my time in a classroom. And of course, I am not talking about those who, right, when you don't have an option. However, if we shift that energy to figure out a way, like you said, Damaris, right? So we do have, like I know we have a parent who's able to come in early. We have clearances and all that. Like we strategically ended up utilizing that so that just in case we do have that coverage. And imagine if I was strategic and use the time at the beginning to train them. So I can train them strategically so that when that time comes, I don't have to pull myself. I don't have to use time later to come back or even correct something because it was wrong. Not to say that we don't have to go back and retrain and all that, but if we just kind of do it in the forefront, then we save in the end. So it's one of those, if we shift the way we think about it, we can afford it. I can't afford to be in the classroom. That's what I can't.
That part.
I actually lose money when I'm in the classroom.
You see, that's what I'm saying.
I lose money, and I always say that, thank God that I have directors and, assistant directors and leaders in my organization that understand that concept, right? They understand, it's like playing chess. They protect the queen at all costs, right? It's a strategic game of chess, guys. I'm really huge on that. And my leadership team knows that there is a hierarchy for a reason, right? And what they do is they protect me. So I'm never in classrooms unless I want to be in a classroom, because they know that if I'm in a classroom, it's holding them back from getting money, right? Making moves, you know what I mean? Doing these big moves, right? For them to continue to grow. We are lucky that we were able to create these strategic plans and put plans in place and put systems in place that our directors are very seldomly in classrooms too. So they're working on organization stuff to keep the flow going, and then if they do have to go into a classroom, I can count the times, really, honestly, because we have support staff. Right. So I always say, go with your flow, use your staffing that you have, look at your staffing plans and use them wisely. And there are times where I'm not a big fan of either of sending people home when there's no kids. I don't do that, guys. I really don't. So here's what I do. Instead of sending people home to save me a couple of dollars, I save me a couple of headaches. I start saying, oh, we don't have enough. We have all this staff. Well, guess what we're doing? Spring cleaning today. Or guess what we're going to do? We're going to catch up on those ed files because these teachers need some help and they need some additional hands. Or here's what we're going to do. We're going to give this one-on-one, right, to this particular child that really needs some extra love today. Or we're going to give some breathers. And those are all things that are return of investments back to your program. Even if it's a one-on-one read aloud with a child that somebody can do, it really, really, on the long run, it goes a long way. It really goes a long way.
And so here's the beauty of this wonderful conversation, because for those of you that are listening and maybe thinking, I can't afford it, I wonder how you do that. You got to show me how. Well,
I'll show you.
we have a wonderful 18-week leadership course that is starting this Monday or the 23rd, where we get to teach you about how we created these investments so that they are sustainable, right? And the truth is, as I stated, I didn't know all of this stuff. That's why, for me, going inside of the library, enrolling in the early childhood program at CCP, like those were the things that I had to learn. And many people are not taking the time to make those investments. And here's the other thing about everything that the both of you just shared is that you two, as well as I know, is you learn those things through trial and error,
Yes.
right? And so without a community, you're bumping your head all along the way trying to figure it out and figure out, does this work? What works? What doesn't work? And so what is really, really instrumental and foundational is that inside of our program, like we remove all of those barriers and those mistakes, and we put up bumper rails. Like when you go to the bowling alley, like, the three of us become bumper rails so that you're not making these costly mistakes and hitting your head and falling down the lane, because there's bumper rails up that says, no baby, let me keep you right here so that you can get a strike. I'm just saying.
Yep. I like that. Those bumper rails are real. They're real.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's real.
And here's the thing, I've been in this field for 20 years. And like you said, I learned bump and error. And I wish I had community before, right? Yes, I'm always I try to really go to every platform to really learn, to absorb, right? And bring back to my organization to help strengthen, our business, my business practices and everything. So, I go to a lot of places and do a lot of trainings and so on and so forth. Um, but wow, I can really say that, this fellowship is so different from the last 20 years that I have been, since the 20 years that I've been. I have not experienced something as unique and as intentional, geared to real life, situations. And no shade on anybody. I really do not, I don't like to knock anyone's hustle. But I've been to places I'm like, ugh, why did I just pay for this? Right? Or why do I have to take this? Because I have to check off, like, that check mark in some stupid, indicator stating that I didn't. I'm getting no value out of it. And we have so many of those things now, right? Because life after COVID is different. It's life after COVID, right? We all know that we pulled a band-aid off of childcare, right? After a bleeding band-aid, right? A bleeding wound. There was a band-aid on that, and COVID just pulled that off, right? So we are in a fragile industry, right? And we need to have real life trainings, professional development supports to sustain, to strengthen our businesses, or even to jump back into business from that.
Yes.
Right. And in the majority of the things that are out there is still on ancient time.
Yep.
Why are you talking to me about what happened? This is a training from 3 years ago. And we're here today with staffing issues. We're here today, with low morals, more mental health, of trauma. And these things are not being connected to real life, right? I know a lot of people. Yes, just yesterday alone, I just heard another organization shutting their doors. Families were calling me, desperate to get their kids in. I'm like, I'm fully enrolled. I have no space for you. But here's the thing, I went for that same space a few years ago. I just want to tell you a real quick story. And the owner refused to meet me in my terms. I'm a huge lease negotiator. I don't, if it doesn't make sense, I'm not gonna do it. If it doesn't plug into my numbers, and if it's not if it's not beneficial to me, I'm not jumping. Like at the end of the day, it has to benefit me, and I want sustainability, right? And I walked away from this deal, and it was a beautiful location. And I literally walked away from this deal. And I said, no, we're good. And he said, well, this person's willing to pay for it. I said, I bet you that person won't last 5 years. Guys, I brought, and I feel bad that I said that, but I honestly tell you that person was 4 years in. And today
So
closed the door.
So wait, so I want you to really unpack this, right? Because we're talking about investments. And so can we just rewind a little bit so that you can tell the audience how did you get to become this negotiator?
I I went through this Goldman Sachs. I've always been pretty gully, right? I always thought differently. I took some business classes, so I invested
You
in that.
invested, you
I
invested.
invested in making sure that I took business course classwork because I knew that I had a niche for it, right? And I said, I'm going to take this. And I just started loving it, human resource and really getting into all of these things and really putting into my hustle. I want to say my hustle into a more professional platform, right? Because I had my first business at 21, guys. I own a restaurant by the time I was 21. So I was always hustling in business. By the time I was 28, I had a billing and insurance company, and then went into the childcare space, right? So it's like business after business. So I know I've always been an entrepreneur, and I wanted to strengthen that. So I made sure I invested in learning the trade, right? In learning how to do that through the Goldman Sachs program that we all went through. There was a series, right? Where we were talking about, it was what is it?
Negotiations. Uh-huh.
Negotiations that I didn't connect to. I didn't connect with, right? I didn't get nothing out of it. Not that I didn't get nothing out of it. I just wasn't really, maybe it was, I believe it was the instructor.
Okay.
And you and I went to a seminar. I think it was in July or something like that. And that same instructor was there. And I was like, I'm not sure if I really want to, do it. And he was like, oh, come on, let's go. I said, come on, you know what? I'm going to invest in me again. And I'm going to go with an open heart. I'm going to put that biasness aside. Right. And today we're in person, and I'm going to go with an open mind. And she blew me out of my mind. I must have read her book 3 times. Maury, if you are listening to me, you are the one. You are my inspiration. I could tell you, honestly, I always go back, and every time I'm negotiating, which I always negotiated, Maury just put it into perspective, right? I've always been a strong negotiator. So every time I'm negotiating something, I always smile back and think of that, right? Because Maury, I always think Maury would be so proud of me. You know what I mean? When I do these things. So, again, I invested in me, and sometimes investment's not only money. I started off saying I'm invested, in this money, in life insurance, this, and that. But boy, I invested in me. I invested in opening up new doors, or reopening up a door, right? That I couldn't connect with before. And today, because I decided to go in with an open lens, I've learned a whole new trade.
Wow.
That I'm bringing other childcare and other business people under the consulting business up to par. They're like, well, how did you do this? Well, I negotiated this way, and let's go. I'm going to teach you how to do this, So it's
Another thing you get to learn in the leadership, I just had to put that in there. Said that, you get, this is just a little appetizer, but this is also, it's all in there. It's all in the leadership.
it's really deep because, I've read some contracts and leases, and I'm like, you agreed to this? And how much money you invested? They're like, oh, and I said, so how are you depreciating? And they just look at me, they don't know. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't know? So you invested all this money, how are you going to get your money back?
Because what we learn is, and this is the sad part. Well, I don't know if we learn it. I don't know where it comes from, but okay, the ELRC is paying X amount for each child. I'm going to calculate those numbers, and that's how much I can make every month.
And we learn. No, here's this thing. It's like a
That's
battery.
it.
You know, it is like a traumatic wheel, and it just drives me insane. Guys, don't underestimate what you're worth ever. And that's something you will learn in the fellowship as well, right? You have to put what you are worth. What are you bringing to that table, right? We talk about, the true cost of childcare. We're talking about this there's so many business, practices and professional development on the true cost of childcare. Before we could get to the true cost of childcare, let's talk about what is your true cost.
Yes.
Right? What is your worth? When people come into my building, they're coming into a high quality building with high qualifying teachers that are invested in loving their children, food, free diapers, free this, free that. I'm putting a price on that, right? Because I work 12 hours a day for 20 years times XY amount of money. I'm thinking, and if you times that, that's trillions of billions of hours
that you invested,
to make sure that when your babies come into my organization, they have everything at their fingertips, right? So you're going to pay for that.
Yeah.
So as a result of your investment,
again,
the return is that you get to be the boss that you are today and be gully because you have a firm, strong foundation built on confidence and integrity, along with the community that you've created to say, absolutely, I belong here, I deserve to be here, and I've invested in me, and I am worth it. Take it or leave it.
Yes. And that's come from very beginning. When I moved into South Philadelphia, I have a long story to tell, but short story is that I wasn't very welcomed, right? A woman of color in a primarily white neighborhood, Italian neighborhood. I was one of the first minority people to move in South Philadelphia in this area. And I said, oh, you got me messed up, right? Because I'm here to stay. Mm. And if you don't want people like me moving into your neighborhoods, maybe you should move to places where people like me can't afford. Because I purchased this property just like you purchased yours. Matter of fact, a little bit more money, right? Because you had yours before and I had mine now. But here's the thing. I decided, I'm going to invest in this community because you're going to learn how to respect me. You don't have to like me, but you're going to respect me. And today, I'm a proud member of that community. I feed the community. I support the community. I invest in my community because they invest in me.
That's another investment.
That's another investment.
And the
return.
Has you full at capacity.
There we go. Absolutely. And I know that's actually one facet of our mission. Like, we are serious about community. So even when we partner, our state rep, we're really close, and we have an amazing community group. I still remember before we came into that building, we had to interview with them. We really had to sit down and let them know who we were and what were you.
The RCOs. You did an RCO. Yeah.
And it was so serious though. Right. Yeah. And we really had to prove why we should be allowed into the neighborhood.
I love RCO meetings.
It was phenomenal. I was really impressed though.
I love RCO meetings.
We're just not moving into our neighborhood. And now, we are truly, we've been told, like a gym in the community. And so they look out for us when we have community events. They are there, they're calling, they're referring, right? So that really is an investment. How are you showing up in the community, which is huge? And something else you said that I think, especially in our industry, we don't talk about your value. We don't talk about that. It's all about, kind of what are all the services that you're going to provide. And a lot of times we think about the general services, and everyone kind of follows that instead of being able to find their own voice to say, this is who we are, and we stand firm in that. And sometimes a family may not be a good fit, and that's okay. Right. I remember a time when it was like, oh, they paused. I could take $10 off. 20. How much is the neighbor charging? We can beat that. No,
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 we're not.
no, no. Because let me tell you why. Let me tell you why. This is our rate, and then I pause. That's our okay. When would you like to schedule a tour? And we go from there. But let me tell you why our rate is that way. And then not only do we really need to be sure about that, but our staff as well. They really need to be clear about this is why we charge what we charge, which still isn't enough, but that's another conversation. But I don't think we talk about that enough.
No, don't.
High value.
We don't talk about the values. I started off as a family child care center, and like every other, a lot of family child care centers, I didn't pay myself, and I was like, wait a minute, hold up.
You ain't make enough to pay yourself. You
I
don't
said,
make,
wait, hold up.
enough money to pay
This isn't
yourself.
for me. But here's the thing, because I was always into that business aspect, I was like, okay, I need to pay myself. Like I need tax returns because I need my taxes. I need, I also need like an IRA. I need, some type of, savings plan. I want to retire. So what happens in things? I always set up to meet that. But a lot of, organizations, they don't. That's when I decided, I'm sorry, let me back up a little bit. That's when I decided, oh, no. I'm going to put my worth here. So if this is not for you, it's okay. And I wish you luck finding an organization or a center that fits your needs, but you don't fit my needs. When I get tours and my families come in, they think they're really interviewing me. I'm really interviewing them. Are we going to be able to connect? Right? Are you going to give me the keys to your car or your house? Can I come into your house? And they look at me like I'm crazy. I heard this in one of the, I think it was one of the seminars that we went to, and they asked that valuable question. I brought that back to my organization. Would you give me the keys to your house? And they look at me like, no. And I'm like, well, why would you want to bring me your child?
I love that. I love that.
I use it all the time. And you know what? They love it too. And it's transparency. They know who they're coming to, right? I said, I'm always going to be transparent. I'm not going to lie to you. If your baby got hurt, I'm going to tell you if your baby got hurt. I'm not going to tell you, I don't know why. I'm going to tell you because I wasn't watching the baby if that's what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had those conversations. These little kids are really fast. Don't think that I'm, not watching babies. I'm not in a classroom right now, but things like that happen, right? That you turn around really quickly and a child just in a split in a second hits something. And then you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know what happened. I think the child hit his head or whatever, or slipped. And when you're talking to a family member, you're like, I don't know, or not me. Listen, I turned around and your little Bruce was like, quick, and I couldn't catch him because I'm old, right? My reflex is this is the way I speak because I'm transparent and I keep it real. And that's the investment as well, right? That's the investment as well, is to keeping that transparency, making sure that you tell your families who you are from the jump, and this is why I'm still worth it. This is why, But I wanted to jump to a different term of investment as well. Preparing for what ifs, what happens, right? For those emergency. In Spanish, we call them por si acaso, right? We have por si acaso funds. So por si acaso funds means always saving for a rainy day.
I was going to say rainy day. I used to hate
it's rainy day funds, right? And, I've had many rainy days in the past month, right? That if I didn't have systems or invested the way I have invested in me, I would be out of a business right now. True facts, right? And you guys know this, right? And I feel as though, that is an important component too, that is not shared with a lot of childcare industries, businesses in general, small businesses, where you have to invest and save for those rainy days, por si acaso in Spanish funds, because things happen that are out of your reach. You guys remember when we didn't get a budget? That was years ago, right?
Yes.
And
2009, never forget it.
Yes.
2009, remember that 2009 where the
Hard.
budget passed and it was like how many months we didn't get
It
paid?
was 3 months,
It was
three.
long.
It was,
I
yeah.
think you're right with 3. I think you're
No,
right.
it was. I
It
listen. I
felt like a year.
remember to the
It felt like a
day.
year. You know what I mean? So that to me, once when I went there, I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready, just like a lot of places or a lot of other childcares wasn't ready. And I really struggled. Like I was just like nervous. I was like, I would never be in that position again.
Mm.
Never.
Mm.
That's why you have to invest in that in yourself to make sure that you have those por si acaso funds, guys.
And if you want to learn what she did to pivot,
Uh,
so that she could never be in that position again, then you need to invest in
that's
our leadership fellowship program so you can get the ins and outs of how to protect yourself for the what ifs.
And it's interesting you say that. When you just said that, it made me think back to that moment, where I was in business. That's when I decided to diversify our funding, because that was the most uncomfortable space to, like, all of our center, 97%, like it was the majority of our money was subsidized. We were relying on that one source of funding. And after that is when I started to learn more about blended funding.
blended funding. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. I was
Blended
like, I don't.
Another investment. Another ding, ding, ding.
That was work.
I want to highlight all these nuggets y'all dropping.
Yes, that was work. And really, because at that point, when I say going through the stars process, the Keystone Stars process, back then we had Success by 6. And I remember, I still remember the first meeting we had, and they said, they shared the analogy. You shared that 2 years. This had to have been over 10 years ago, about some staff are going to have to get off the bus. I will never forget that. And I'm sitting in there and I'm like, what do they mean? These are our people. Our staffing had to change. We had to make investments in a different set of staff. I had to be more intentional about who I was hiring. When I say investments on all kinds of levels, it was crazy, but
it was scary. It was crazy. It was a stretch because it was not popular.
Oh my goodness. I remember that process, but it really stemmed from, I never wanted to be in that position again, to be sitting and waiting for that one funding source to say, okay, here's your money.
All your eggs in one basket. Don't do it, guys. Don't do it.
And so those of you that are listening are probably wondering, I'm in that situation right now where I only have one source of income, and I am doing all that I know to do to position myself to get in pre-K counts or Head Starts, and I am bumping my head and I am frustrated and I am over it. Then you need to invest in the leadership cohort so that you can learn how to position yourself to apply so that you can have multiple streams of funding.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I didn't know how to apply for, like, proposals, right? You had to do all those, like, RFPs and had no idea. Now that makes me think about one of my other investments, and I think it speaks to all the stuff we just spoke to, which is coaches and consultants, because I didn't know. And a lot of times we're stuck where we are because we don't know, but we don't invest in the people who do. And when I say coaches and consultants, I'm talking about, like, I have a couple coaches.
Yeah, even coaches have coaches.
Coaches have
A good coach has coaches.
I'm talking investment. Let me look in the camera. Investment. I'm talking
investment.
No, my budget aligns for it, right? I got to make that line item. If I have to reduce, we're not going to spend all that money on that construction paper this year, or that because there's another line item that's extremely important, because even my coaches and consultants are not just for me. I have them for my staff.
Right.
But then we also have other consultants, if you will, right? Those financial advisors, CPA, all of those people who, like you mentioned, the kind of insurances. There were some insurances that I wasn't clear about that I needed to be included in my policy. Because like you said, sometimes we don't know about something until that situation happens. And it's like, oh my goodness, I
And you
wish
get
I
hit with
had
right.
that. Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. So now, after the Goldman Sachs program, that's when I learned that we shouldn't just have these people to say we have these people. We should have relationships with our professional team so that I can say, this is what I want for my business and my life. And they say, okay, well, let me tell you the options.
That's another investment.
That's an
Relationship capital is what that's called.
Relationship capital.
I gotta type that one in the chat. That's good. Wait a second.
Relationship capital. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. It's wow, when we're talking about investments so much, I'm kind of crazy. Every year, January 2nd, you know what I do, guys? And I'm just going to share this with you guys. I go and call all of my life insurance policies because I have a few, and I up them.
Yes, ma'am.
Right? And I make sure, I have whole life and I have terms. So if you guys don't know that, look it up.
We
and
know.
Then, so, I always bring them up to the next level. So I do that yearly. And then I look at my shares and all this other stuff. Plus I look at my IRA, what I've, brought in and all this other fun stuff. Then I also go into my bank. This is all January 2nd. This is my routine. January 2nd, that's the first week of January. You know why? Because I'm starting, how people be like, my New Year's resolution. No, I don't do new resolutions. My New Year is to make sure that my stuff is good for the whole entire year, right? For this year, that my family is covered, right? My investments, right, are covered as well. So, that's something as well that you can learn from, you will learn from this cohort, and how to banking relationships, guys.
Exactly.
You have to, be the investment is you're working with a bank. You need to go and form relationships and get a line of credit.
Yep.
So we teach you how to do that as well, and why it's important to have a line of credit. Those are the por si acaso funds. Going back to that Spanish, guys, to that term, those por si acaso funds.
Yes, I love it. I love it. Ooh, it's a mindset shift too, because
it is a mindset shift.
It's a mindset shift. I was sharing with my accountability group. We were reading. We were reading
Outwitting the Devil.
Again. That's the new one.
Okay.
We were reading Rich Dad Poor Dad again. That was probably one of my first business books I read over like 20 years ago. I didn't understand it then, but this time I was like, so read it again, and I was in the store. My background is in fashion, so don't judge me when I buy stuff in fashion, because fashion is my background. So do not judge me. I'm gonna look in the camera again. Do not judge me. But I like stuff. But I really was ready to, like, that was an investment. This bag that I was holding it, and it was nice. It was nice. But seriously, I had my daughter with me. She was like, "Mommy," I was like, "Right." But honestly, because my mindset was shifting, because I was reading Rich Dad Poor Dad and actually a lot of business books this past year, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it.
Because you wasn't going to make that investment in a liability.
I sure wasn't.
Because what Rich Dad Poor Dad teaches us is that you create assets that create more assets. And if you have to get a liability, it's because you have assets that covers the liability.
Yep. So with the money ended up going into, I promise you, this is exactly what happened. I finally made the call, right? Kevin Smith will be on next time. We'll talk about it. I finally made the call. I think it was December 31st. And he was like, I came in the office and I didn't think anyone would call. I had to make sure that was like, I was starting the new year right, like you were saying, Damaris. And I said, no, I'd have to do it today. And I put that money there. And then I put it in, what are they called? The investment that you share with me. Yep. I increased it.
Oh, okay.
Because I increased it. I was like, yep. Because if I had the money to do that, no ma'am, then you have the money to put it into the right place that can actually make you more money.
Yes.
So and that really does take, again, that takes community, being around right people. We spoke about masterminds earlier.
Discipline. Who
Discipline.
doesn't hold you accountable?
Listen,
One of my seminars, we talk about breaking bad habits,
Mm-hmm.
right? We all have bad habits, and saving and investing in yourself. You have to break the bad habits, unfortunately, and be real about that, right? Be real intentional about that. So if you're buying, like Aaliyah, I know we're talking about fashion, but if you're buying $100 or $1,000 bag,
I was about to say
right?
$100 now. The man.
Whatever it is, if you're spending $1,000 on a bag, do you really need that bag? Like,
Right.
what is your investment on that bag other than looking pretty,
Right.
right? So really think about being intentional about spending that $1,000 and something's going to bring you something back, because that bag ain't going to really bring you anything back. Another thing is breaking those habits, and I tell this to my daughters all the time. I actually taught my oldest daughter how to save money this way. You know, put it in an ING account.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, "What
Yep.
is that?" And I'm like, "Just do it."
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because here's the thing. It will take you 3 days to get your money back. So that splurge spending is going to go out the door. Do you really need that bag after the third day? You're not going to wait for it. You know what I mean? So that splurge, for those of you, I'm going to give you a free tip. Um, for those of you that love splurge spending, go into an IEG account, save your money there, and trust me, you're gonna thank me, right? And that money will grow there, and you will start learning how to be disciplined, right, and spending your money correctly. And we do go into that with a lot more detail in our fellowship class. I took it up. Go ahead, Obiama, you got it. Go. That's your that's your cue. Go.
Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to say that we've really dropped a lot of nuggets here as it relates to investment. So I wanted to kind of just do a recap as we bring this podcast to a close on tonight. So we talked about, Damaris kicked us off with talking about the financial investments and the importance of making sure that you are over insured, especially as a business owner and also as a person, whether you are leasing a building or the building is yours, because there are things that happen that even though you are under a lease or a contract, it can still cause you to lose business if you are uninsured while you're waiting for their insurance to kick in. You have to have your own insurance so that you have a consistent cash flow. And so Damaris kicked us off with talking about the importance of being overinsured and having all these different things in place. And then we went into, especially if God forbid the impasse, the budget impasse happens again, which providers didn't get paid for 3 months. What are you going to do? And we know a lot of providers had to close. A lot of providers, went out of business, right? And then we talked about the investment in floaters, right? And in this day, in these COVID streets, post-COVID streets, right? People are still getting sick. People are still dealing with trauma. There are all kind of things that are causing people not to show up. And so if you have not invested in a floater, that means that you have invested in yourself being the floater. And ain't nobody got time for that,
That's
right?
an
And
expensive
so,
floater.
yeah, a very expensive floater. Ain't nobody got time for that. And so, and I share with you guys the importance of learning the business, making the investment to invest in the courses that you need to take. For me, it was being in the library, it was going to CCP because I knew nothing about the business of childcare or taking care of people's children. And then we talked about the relationship capital, right? And building those right relationships and the community, which gives you the return of knowing that you have somebody to go to, or you have a group of people, a mastermind group that you can go to that's a safe space to say, this is what I'm dealing with. Who do you know? Do you have a resource, right? So whether it is the insurance that you are investing in, or the people that you are investing in, or the education that you are investing in. These are all different ways in which you can invest. And more importantly, wherever you are in your program, if you are feeling like you are stuck, if you are feeling like I need community, or maybe you're just like, I'm ready to go to the next level and I'm the smartest person in my circle, we invite you. We humbly extend an invitation to you. Space is limited, but we do have our leadership cohort fellowship starting this Monday. Is the second cohort, and you are welcome to invest in yourself and gain from us, our collective 50 years of experience. You get to invest in you, and we get to pour into you. And so this right here was just the appetizer. When you come to the course, it's a buffet.
Yay.
And with that,
Right,
there's
drop mic. That's
it.
it. That's it.
Yes. Thank you guys for joining us this evening. I can't even say I hope you guys took something away. You had to have, because I know I did. But thank you for joining us. For sure, you can still leave comments, ask questions. We are following up with our second investment conversation with financial advisor, where he's going to share some really great gems so that you could be financially free. So you'll catch that on the next episode. Thank you for joining us for the Impact Podcast. We'll see you soon.